am born in Lithuania, in Vilnius, and this country in my times was sacred. There were sacred rivers, there were sacred forests, there were sacred wells, there were sacred animals, there was sacred earth which had to be kissed in the morning and in the evening, and prayers had to be said. I saw all that in my childhood.
And there we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wrote an email, and now things are happening. Things are quite insane, aren't they? And sometimes I wonder what the hell I'm doing. But I try to bring you along to, well, my world of madness. See you in the field. So yes, we'll see you in the field. But before we do, I need to talk about, well, what the hell is happening here. It will be a long video, and I will cut it into parts. So if there's a specific part that you are more interested in, you can go there and you can skip certain parts. But in the beginning now, we're going to talk about ethnogenesis. And it was something I wished to explore for a while now, and I had an opportunity to do it in the field, which was quite amazing, and I'm going to show it here. And in this journey, it's more or less about what is a Lithuanian. Now, I had gone back and forth quite a lot now on where to start this. I never get happy. But I think I will start this way, looking at language and not the historical breakdown, because that takes a little while, and I'll skip that.
I actually met a few Sikh guys here in Kaunas. Sikhs, yeah. Very nice people, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking. Like, I was like, yeah, you know, Sanskrit, let's talk about history, you know. Yeah. I really like to nag people about history when I'm a bit under the influence. So we talked about, and very detailed about, we picked like words, and I say like, we have a word, God, Dievas.
Yeah.
And Sanskrit has Devas.
Yeah.
Sanskrit has Devas, means same word.
So it means then that even though obviously there's been a different, like I said, genetic component over time, the linguistics has barely changed.
Yeah. Like Sanskrit, fire means Agnis, in our Ugnis.
And then Ignis is also for fire in Latin.
My name is Ignas. So,
yeah.
Fire, yeah.
So, is fire, or is it feminine?
Now this is my next question. So we know Gerasaurus, good weather, meaning the sky, or the weather is male. Therefore the word, it can't be Gera, it has to be Geras. What's female? Is fire a female word or not? Or is that a male word?
Ugnis, like fire?
Yeah.
Ugnis, you could say Ugnis, Jis yra ugnis. It's like you can say it in the context of a male and a female, but it's gonna sound the same. It doesn't change.
But unlike the sky where it's definitely male, you're saying that the fire thing is not specifically nailed down, because we were thinking that maybe the fire were female, the sky were male. We were
Dangus. Sky means dangus. Dangus is male.
Yeah.
Male, yeah. So a lot of our words just are male in the sense.
Yeah, because obviously in Germanic what we speak, we don't have gender case to it. So like words don't have a male, you know, like you got in French il and elle and things like that. In Germanic we don't have that. But in your language you still use gender in the
yes.
Each word has a male and female component.
We have certain endings for male and female.
So for instance, like if I'm saying good, if it's a male afterword, the first word has to be geras. If it's a female word, it's gera, isn't it?
Yes.
So like for instance, book is a female word, so you'd say gera, I think it's kniga or something. Kniga is the book, but that's a good book, so it's female. Like say Gerasaurus, good weather or good, that's male.
Yeah, if you say kniga,
so you have to change the word, the first word has to change depending on the gender of the last word.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's very Indo-European, because that's...
Even for me, a native Lithuanian speaker, just when you try to explain to someone, the whole thing is like, I didn't know that.
That's what he's good at.
Yeah.
And now I will show you a clip from a person that is from Romuva, the neo-pagan group in Lithuania that we went to visit, where he talks about some similarities within Hindu or Sanskrit and Lithuanian and the old Lithuanian religion.
Our main idea, notion is of dharna, is the same word as Hindu, Sanskrit dharma, or Greek harmony. There's even the same root of the word is there in ancient Greek, in Lithuanian, and in Sanskrit. is the idea of harmony, of coexistence, of listening to each other and arriving at a conclusion that would suit everyone. It is not about, opposites that fight each other. It's about various proportions of aspects of nature and life, just finding balance between each other, finding the proper rhythm, the proper amounts of materials, amounts of whatever, of ideas of something that can coexist and can find ways to stay together in harmony, right? So our message would be that we live in harmony with nature, but also with ourselves and with other people, of other traditions, other nations, and so on. And I think that is important because many a time when we speak about, let's say, history, about Romuva faith, we stress how it was persecuted, how it was being people were trying to destroy that. But I don't want that, and I don't think it's very important to stress this antagonistic relationships.
Yeah. Acknowledge it happened, but like say,
yes, knowledge it happened.
Yeah.
It's important. Yeah, it did happen, and we cannot go around it. But as the spirit of eagle taught me, you have to accept the way the world is, with its history, with its nature, with its physical laws and so on, and not try to control the story is the wisdom that has been passed down to me. Accept it and find beauty in the way that things are, and in this way you will find calmness, serenity. And serenity, calmness is kind of translation of word Romuva. Romuva means ramybė, peace, serenity, the thing that the kind of state of mind that we find in nature. Serenity with acceptance and appreciation of the beauty of the way things are, even though it might be bloody, even though it may be cruel, but finding beauty in everything, even in those things, is the way to achieve that Romuva state, that serenity.
So you can see here clear understanding of language, how the Indo-European connection with both Lithuania and India. But there's a thing here that actually doesn't make this ethnogenesis result. Lithuanians, while being influenced by Indo-European ideas, aren't Indo-European. In a lot of neo-pagan concepts, especially in Eastern Europe, it is the Yamnaya Aryan, quote-unquote Indo-Aryan and Indo-European traditions and myths is actually usually in center. But the people are actually not those people, because Yamnaya per se didn't create anything. They came and genetically replaced, destroyed a lot of things, and sort of with force they came in and became something else. So that would mean the Lithuanian is something else. He has Indo-European connections, but he's not an Indo-European. So I will give a full explanation of what the Lithuanian man is. But first, I need you to understand something else. And we'll go back to Ignis again. And this time, it will actually go into the creation of Lithuania, to being Lithuanian, and then I will go into explaining what a Lithuanian is. But you need to understand the context.
So we are on Lizdeikos Kalnas, Lizdeikos hill. And Lizdeika is a mythical figure, also historical figure, the highest priest of all Romuva tradition in Middle Ages, at the time of Great Duke Gediminas. And Great Duke Gediminas used to reside in Trakai, in the castle in the middle of the lake. And he came here hunting. And while he was hunting, he had a dream. And in those times, dreams were auspicious and they used to be interpreted by special figures. And that dream was interpreted by this Lizdeika, the highest priest, that used to live on this hill. But let's get back a little bit, and there's a very fascinating story about how Lizdeika came to be the highest priest. So according to the legend, he was born to some parents, unknown parents, and somehow he was taken on and put in an eagle's nest. And so nobody knows who his parents were, but people found him in a nest of an eagle on this hill. And when they found it in a nest of the eagle, they decided that this guy will be the great priest, because eagle is the ruler of the sky and a bird of the god of thunder, Perkūnas. And so a person found in the nest of the eagle, his name literally translates a guy found in the nest, Lizdeika. And in a dream, Gediminas saw an iron wolf standing on a hill and howling, and the voice of that iron wolf was spreading throughout the lands. He went on this hill and met this priest Lizdeika and asked and told him, the story that he saw in his dream. And Lizdeika interpreted the dream in a way that he said that you will build a powerful city here in this place, and the fame and the sound of the city, like the voice of Iron Wolf, will spread throughout the lands. And thus Gediminas found the capital of Lithuania here in Vilnius and named it Vilnius, after the river that flows into this bigger river, Neris. So this place, this hill, is a big part of the whole myth of founding of this capital city of Lithuania. Not by blood, but by something, by my experiences too.
You never know, you might be related to him. Remember, it's one big extended happy family, the Lithuanian Baltic tribes.
True.
Yeah.
But maybe it's also my wishful thinking.
So you think you've been picked by the bird then? You think the eagles picked you then?
I think they did. I did not do it on purpose. We're not calling for them. I just experienced this vision that the eagle comes from across the Atlantic Ocean and lands into my consciousness, and I become it.
Like goes inside you almost, then you become the bird as well.
I become the bird, and I can see myself having a beak. I can see myself flying there, and it gave me some message, some teachings that deep inside that I still try to follow every day, So it gave me some most important lessons that I try to follow every day, like ethical teaching.
Like say, like you mentioned earlier, not striving for power. If someone's power hungry, then
So
they teach humility, some of this as well.
They taught me the same thing.
Yeah.
They taught, and they showed like that the eagle is usually understood as an observer, a bird that observes, kind of similar to our function of our mind, to make generalizations, to observe, to abstract ideas and so on. I'm a philosopher by profession, so I'm working a lot with abstraction.
Yeah.
So the bird showed me that this is the function of observance, is not to judge, not to control, not to try to direct everything, but just to observe and experience beauty in the way that things naturally work without trying to control it. And it showed me like that some kind of symbolical, there's this part of the beak is like the analytical mind that likes to divide things and to look for details, peck through.
Yeah.
And this part is like the passionate part of your essence, with which you actually should make decisions in your life. This part, your mind only observes and don't try to control or make important decisions, but you follow your heart basically, and you choose what you prey on, you choose your partner, whatever, you choose by the heart, not by the mind. And in this way, the eagle showed me that in this way you would be one with nature and you would follow the way of the ancestors.
The reason why this is very important is the Druid uses not in the European tradition, but something much older. Even though this is about 1,000 years ago, this is a much older tradition that he's upkeeping, using what he can learn from the animals. And this is something that Indo-Europeans didn't have to do because they were way more advanced. So it's a lot older tradition. So who are the Lithuanians? If they're not Indo-European and uses even older traditions, who are they?
And then like that.
And shoot.
You go bang, bang! Come and have some, bastard!
Stand.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do that again. Go. Yeah. Shield. Oh, like that.
When we talk about ethnogenesis, obviously we can go back to the first humans, but I don't really see a point. So we're gonna go up to the point where humans have arrived to Europe, and that is by 40,000 BC. And by this point there was already other humanoids in Europe, the Neanderthals. But humans could outcompete the Neanderthal by using group cooperation, and this is to hunt mammoths, reindeers, and other megafauna, and they predominantly lived in caves. From this point onwards, European DNA is observable as a U haplogroup and is found around the time of the Cro-Magnon, meaning around 37,000 before Christ, and then in 30,000 before Christ, the original Aurignacian package had been replaced by the more specific Gravettian culture, responding to a further cooling of Europe. Hunting now has become more specialized as they group herd animals into narrow valleys, ambushing them in kill zones and using nets to trap small animals, hunt fish and seal. The first stone lamps appeared, blunt black knives, tanged arrowheads, and boomerangs. These people had the first female shaman, featuring refined of the statue of Venus, female form. Adult males are over 6 foot, 2 inches. Women are shorter, 5 feet, 2 inches. This is because males had to do high risk for high reward, while women did low risk for low reward. And they lived in open-air sites now, rather than caves. 22,000 BC, the last glacial maximum occurs, forcing the Sayavas into glacial refuge. The previous and last unified culture to be seen in Europe, the Gravettians, split into 2 distinct cultures, in Italy and across Balkans to Ukraine and Russia, to the previous package continue as the Epigravettians. However, in southern France, the Sultrian culture adapts to the changing environments and prospers by making the most advanced toolkits not seen for millennia, using bone implants rather than rely on flint. 17,000 before Christ, the climate began to warm again, and the Magdalene culture spread across Europe, pursuing the last of the megafauna, which is the mammoths, because now they suddenly go extinct. And now reindeers is what people wanted. Become sought after, and one big reason is because reindeer bones flex. They don't shatter when you use them as tools. Despite the cultural package being more associable with Western Gravettian genetics, the survivors of the Epigravettian in Italy through to Ukraine formed the majority of the DNA of the Magdaleans. This form is the basis of Western gatherer genetics. With most of the megafauna gone and only reindeer bones left, it became the basis for their industry. Then the final cold period in Europe, the Younger Dryas, around 12,000, coincides with the split of the more prosperous reindeer hunters, the Arenbergs culture, pursuing their prey northwards into Europe, and from there spreading into the UK, Scandinavia, and all the way to Poland. These reindeer hunters prospered in cold environment compared to the remains in southern Europe. In Spain, a dark age occurs as the reindeer hunters leave the previous glacial refuge. These that stayed struggle to adapt with the new entire industries that depend on mammoths, and cooperation between hunter specializations started to collapse. Climate shifted to a warmer climate, meaning flooding and changing hunting patterns. Art became more primitive and population started to decline. The Holocene epoch has begun. Climate stabilization, near to modern Europe condition, tundra is now replaced with forest, and the present animal population are represented. The last of the ice have gone from the Baltic after Younger Dryas unlocked the last areas of permafrost. The Arenberg culture became the Sviderian culture, which later became the Kunda culture. And the Kunda culture is the people who created communities in the Baltic forest zones and became the Lithuanians. But there is a magnum opus, a key sentence for hunter-gatherers. What separates humanoids from the animals around them? Only they can make fire, and in that light make art.
Get yourself a stick,
Hey.
fighting off bloody...
Hey, that's actually nice. That's a nice stick you got.
Get yourself a fucking druidic stick.
Stick.
Don't come to my woods, farmer.
There's a stick here too. I can get this stick. Get that fucking hand-me-down stick, bruh.
You don't get the big druid pole. So boys and girls, I got myself a druid stick. Yay! For beating off Neolithic farmers. Get out!
And then I quickly need to mention the second migration that came to Europe. The first migration were different type of hunter-gatherers, and the third migration being the Indo-European, but the second migration are the Anatolian farmers. the Neolithic farmers. You know, that's why we picked up a stick. It's to beat the farmers. They came, and little by little, we say about 1 kilometer a year, they went into Europe and took and destroyed forests and cultivated the land, little by little by little by little. They were very short people. They were very, very, very short people.
Weaker, they are smaller, they are less intelligent, and they must earn less. That's all.
And they were overall different, but they still succeeded quite well because they were more organized. But those farmers, the Neolithic farmers, didn't actually come to Lithuania for many reasons. One being it's not good farmland in Lithuania. Second reason is probably that people in the forest beat the shit out of them if they try to come in. But so it was never necessary. So when the third migration came along, the Lithuanians were no farmers. They didn't have farmer DNA. Well, some, because it's always like individual migration, but no farmer DNA. So that differs them from the rest of Europe, which has usually a lot of farmer DNA, while Lithuania has barely none. We are currently being attacked.
Oh god.
Let's see.
I knew we'd fucking leave
Fuck.
Destiny, yeah. Fuck.
Fuck.
Because did it come on my phone as well then?
Shit. How Lithuania to test sirens. Oh.
Fucking idiots.
Okay, enough with history. Let's go. Well, to more recent history. 1930s, 1940s, between war periods. What happened? Who are the important people? Who are the important people of the creation of the modern-day Lithuanian state?
We have two figures, the most important.
Gediminas.
Gediminas, I would say,
Oh.
he is very known, but I cannot comment on how much he is important to the
Very
national
contributed
revival.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that he did, but I cannot comment
No,
on
but,
how much. Because I only remembered about Gediminas when he posted the video. Jonas Mačiulis, or also known as Maironis, his pen name, because everyone had a pen name, because the Soviet authorities banned Lithuanian Latin script. Like you couldn't.
So you were forced to write
books,
Cyrillic.
yeah.
Oh,
But
right.
we
So
had book
everyone
smuggling.
secretly had to, a bit like with Christians, they had to do a fish on the floor. sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
interesting.
He was the second most important figure. He was a poet. He wrote a lot of poetry, a lot of articles and everything. Like really important figure on the Bible of standardization of Lithuanian national identity.
It's a bit like Christianity, they keep it on the down with all that, the secret about it. Like I said, they had to use pen names, they'd had to...
Yes. They kept
Things very
the flow,
secret, yeah.
And most of the biggest Bible figures, we have Maironis and we have Vaižgantas, but I don't see him here. Everyone was a priest. So the clergy class was the most of the national revival came from.
Well, they'd be the most, presumably the most learned.
Yes, the
won't they?
most literate people.
Literate,
Yeah.
that's the way they're looking for.
This monument is dedicated to the word karžygiams, what that means to the soldiers, generals, because we have a word called karžygys that means like a warrior. Like karas means war, žygioti means march. So like warriors that are marching. So I say soldiers. It's like
Warriors who march.
yeah, warriors that march. Yeah, have the most important battles written right here. Širvintos, Giedraičiai, these were against Poland. Then we have 1923 liberation of Klaipėda, Memel,
Yeah.
from the pesky French because they had occupied.
The French.
Memel was under jurisdiction of League of Nations.
Ah.
So we
Oh, the
just
French.
came in and we just fucking kicked them out
Really? Jeez.
against the whole world.
So there's two of us who don't like frogs.
Yeah, here it is. I think these battles were against Poland and the Bolsheviks.
You were saying for the previous monument, that's when the most intense fighting went
Yes,
on, wasn't it?
1919 was the whole biggest number of battles were fought in that period. And essentially the Lithuanian army started forming.
Is that what,
in
like, them
period.
three separate battles?
Yeah, just three separate battles. Panevėžys, Dauguva, and Radviliškis. Yeah. Radviliškis.
Yeah, we didn't get good at speaking.
Oh my god, this is the symbol of modern
Dun,
Lithuania.
dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
Like the only few times I used it, I was like, a bit dry.
All that said, restricted texts. So I imagine there was some.
We had this after the uprising of 1863 against the Russian Empire. The Russian Tsar decreed that we should not be allowed to use Latin letters. We can use our language, but we cannot use Latin letters. So we had a system called, in Russian it means Grazdanka. It means Lithuanized words Lithuanian, but written in Cyrillic. Focal point of Lithuanian book printing under the occupation of the Soviet Tsars. Soviet Tsars!
Russian Empire,
yeah. The center was East Prussia. So these people smuggled books in Lithuanian from East Prussia.
So what would they do? Would they print books in Lithuanian?
Yes.
Right, so there was an entire market of this.
Yes. These people smuggled them.
Brave guys.
Yeah. When you read stories about them, they actually have names of them. The most.
Oh, people who got caught doing the job. Yeah.
Yeah. And those people really were brave. Really brave. Really brave.
Because all it takes is a book to change your mind, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mothers, like this monument, like mother is working on a spinning wheel, leaving and teaching her child how to read and write in Lithuanian.
Oh, so they'd say, well, we're just doing a textile stuff. In reality, it was a secret school.
It's a secret school, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so here are the names of various...
These are the boot smugglers.
It's only... how many names? Only 100 names, like here it says. Čia vienas tik 100 įamžintas mūsų, kur gimtąjį raštą gabeno iš Prūsų. It's only 100 names immortalized on the stone from the thousands of people that smuggled books from Prussia.
Because I bet you some of these guys were never even, we didn't even know the names. They would have been, like I said, they'd have died in the service of education, but we don't know who they are.
And these are the names that we know.
Oh, so each of these names in theory represents maybe but each name probably represents 100 people in effect. Yeah.
Yes, and you can see after the name like Ambrozaitis, Jonas, prekybininkas, merchant, a teacher, a priest. Like they all say the professions of those people.
Studentas. Is that
student? Yeah.
Yeah. Now that one there was it.
Ūkininkas, farmer.
Right, so it weren't just... So every occupation were involved in book smuggling.
Everybody, yeah.
And again, that made it difficult for the Russians. They couldn't just pin it down and think, right, well, it's just priests were after them.
Yeah. And they had... the Russian Tsars actually really clamped down on Catholicism.
Yeah, because obviously it's a different religion as well in the Slavic
and because the clergy in that period was the most respected position by the society of Lithuania. The priest was essentially the leader of the whole community. Everybody went to mass, everybody went to mass and everyone.
Yeah.
It's a really big cultural thing. Even today,
like I said, bishops usually, bishops are in control of the city and they usually have the jurisdiction on it, a diocese and whatever.
Not the jurisdiction, but I meant in the sense of societal, the
cohesion.
They really had a power over the whole, village.
Yeah.
And everybody listened to them.
Because we're just taken as I'll just take, taking to leave the advice. People did take his word seriously. Yeah.
Because the priests were the people, even during Soviet times, that were the most resistant against Soviet oppression in Russia.
Well, you could argue they got the most loose because, like I said, they're the most educated.
Yeah, the most educated people.
Because let's say you're an uneducated, someone from the lower strata, for instance, you probably don't understand the depth of your own culture. It's the priests who really understand it.
And essentially Catholicism, even today, is a deeply cultural thing. It's like enshrined to us. Even if you're not religious, you will still be superstitious.
Even though Catholicism came by the sword, didn't it? In a sense, you're still, even though it had a bad start, it didn't start the best.
That's why Gediminas even said, sure, I'm starting a new religion, but if you're Catholic, it's completely fine. Yes, as long as you understand what being a Lithuanian means.
Yeah, because remember, you were pagan a lot longer than you were Catholic. Like say, you were hunter-gatherers longer than you were Yamnaya. So he's sort of trying to remind you, remember what it's like to be a Lithuanian. Yeah. You can still be a Catholic Lithuanian. You just have to know what it's like to be a Lithuanian.
Yes.
That's
it doesn't matter what is your religion. It doesn't matter what's your language. If in the heart you feel you're Lithuanian, you can be Lithuanian.
Oh.
I mean that's the most
nice
we as a culture, we were a state, the biggest state in Europe at one time. And the thing is that we had so many different cultures living here.
You can thank us for kicking your ass.
Because you had the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, it went all the way to like Ukraine, didn't it?
Yeah, we control Ukraine.
Belarus and places like that, yeah.
That's why they were serfs and we was royalty.
There is quite a lot to take in from all of that. I could talk about it over and over again, it feels like. But I want to talk about something special. I want to talk about Jonas Vasunovičius. And sorry for butchering the name here. One thing I gotta give the Lithuanians, your last names are really hard for me to pronounce. But your first names are always Jonas or Ignas. And no other names. There's only names that exist. But Jonas is very important. But it took me a little while to understand what was actually his importance. Because he's a bit of a jack of all trades. He's done so much. But it's something I want to take up and discuss that I view to be extremely important and something we can even learn today. And it's the idea of freedom of press. There was a period between 1883 and 1904 when there was a press ban in Lithuania to make sure that Lithuanian ideas and national ideas doesn't grow, because the Russian Tsar felt that he lost power and he wanted to Russify a lot. And Jonas did something very important here. He created a newspaper, the first national Lithuanian newspaper called Ausra. While the newspaper itself wasn't that large and they had financial problems, so they couldn't really spread that much, just the idea of a newspaper in Lithuanian is a big deal. It's a massive deal. It is extremely important. And it's important then and important throughout history. It's quite ridiculous. Even though Ausra had financial issues and had to stop producing text, someone else came along, created a Varpas, because the idea of spreading that is so important. And it was produced in Prussia, East Prussia, and then smuggled into the country using book smugglers. An interesting part here is what city usually everything was printed in. It's Tilsit, part of Lithuania Minor, or East Prussia, where there's a lot of Lithuanians living in Germany. You heard me talk about Prussian Lithuanians in another video before, and they are extremely important for spreading the idea of an independent Lithuania. And it's very sad what happened to Tilsit, where the archives burnt down. It wasn't ever owned by Lithuanians, it's now owned by Russians, and it's called Sovietsk, which is just damn. But the point of a newspaper, even though it's not big, is the idea that there is a different narrative that can be read, a different angle of the news. So it even goes into when Lithuania became independent in 1990. There were Lithuanian newspapers, underground newspapers, written for Samizdat, which I've talked about a lot before, with Ukraine in particular. It's the underground newspapers. It's not a collection of one, it's just like an umbrella name for all the underground newspapers. But even then, newspapers were spread around, even though the Russians don't want that to be spread around. And because of that, it's possible for people to organize, to understand, and then create an independently new country.
Oh, but basically,
Yeah, love it, nice.
chainmail, and this type of armor is also reappearing right now with the riot police. Because you cannot pierce it with a knife.
Oh, so it's
For example, I will show you. It will go straight through with a screwdriver, but with a knife, no.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Of course, you will get about
At some point, okay.
But then the cotton armor underneath.
Oh, let's see
you,
all the swords stand, yeah.
you have Under Armour, so
And see,
Yeah,
I'm putting
it doesn't even
my
pierce it.
whole body weight, yeah, and
Yeah, and it's not piercing it. But you're saying a screwdriver would just go through it.
yes.
Yes.
For example, they use special daggers, you might say. They're called stilettos, you know.
Yeah,
It's like its blade is triangle basically, and it wouldn't go through plate, but goes through gaps, and gaps are protected by chainmail. It also goes through the chainmail.
So when they were using plate armor, then presumably they'd have had this underneath it as well as the cotton armor.
Might be the full shirt, or might be only places which are
like the cuirass.
sewn on the gambazon.
Yeah.
For example,
Because in armor they said it's like
what
they
you
said
always
like
have
under-
to keep in
like around
mind,
the legs.
but that back then, such things and standardization did not exist. Let's say people right now for many years, tried to put swords in the categories. At the same time, this task is futile because each sword, knowing what was the worth of a sword, which is basically immense, they were extremely expensive, was made for each person accordingly.
So for instance, like a different person would have a different length sword in effect,
exactly.
or subtly different. So
Yes.
taller or the bigger,
Well, of
stronger.
course, we're talking about our ages from 10th to 12th century that we're reenacting. So basically, this is how a normal, very wealthy warrior would have looked like now.
But the cost of, I mean, iron would dearer than gold.
Closely-
Back in the day, iron was more expensive than gold.
Right, we need to
Might
start.
be,
Yeah. But yeah, so they were saying like it would technically like a sword, and so in my part of the world,
That's about
we used to
also the
use
Thomas
really
and
short swords because we were
So
poor.
we don't
could only
understand.
afford like almost like a gladius compared to something like this,
So-
or like say a double-ended, double-handed longsword.
All right, Richard, we have to take it off.
Why is it time to go now?
Soon.
Sorry,
very,
oh,
very,
sorry.
very soon.
No, I said, cheers, seriously guys.
Yeah,
thanks so much for letting us
genuinely
do this. This is
happy.
really cool.
Thank you.
No problem. You're
I don't
welcome.
fancy running off with it. They'd be able.
You guys are okay to be on camera?
Yeah.
Yes, of course, no problem.
Okay.
So I'm
And
just getting
basically,
ideas
one
of
more
it.
thing, one very little thing about the swords. If you can afford a sword, you will definitely be able to afford a sword's length. How much would you like to have, if you know what I mean? Because of the price of this thing, it will be about for something like Lamborghini car.
Back in the medieval period, it would have
Yes,
been equivalent to a
something like
sports
that.
car.
Lamborghinis in that time, but you can tell in horses. How many horses? One sword.
In cows, probably. That would be about 30 cows.
Whoa.
Sword would go to hundreds.
You see, you always gotta keep in mind about sword. What makes sword so different from other weapons?
Axe or spear,
Axe.
basically.
Can be used for chopping wood.
Every household has an axe.
Yeah, anyone could be an axeman. Yeah.
Yes,
Spear can
everybody.
be used to hunt animals as well. Sword can only use for one thing and one thing only, killing people. Sword
Right.
has absolutely no other function than that.
Hence why, for instance, like say, if you wanted to mobilise a peasant army, they'd all either have axes. The English used to have bill hooks,
Yeah.
farming sides.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very cheap and effective.
Yeah, a bill hook's really good because, like I say, you can do three things in one with it. It's a multi-purpose tool. But again, a peasant would have been, like a levy peasantman would have had a billman. Someone from a forest with an axe, but like I say, only a warrior can afford a sword.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, it
Alright.
requires a lot of skill. It's very easy. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what. Let's say, just hitting you are like an idiot, but
Yeah. But, so example, this is one of the reasons they tried banning the crossbow, because they were saying the amount of effort and time it takes to train with this and to be competent. But if you've got a guy who literally 2 hours of training kill you with a crossbow, and they tried banning it in Europe.
It's almost a gun.
Yeah, it was like the great equalizer, and a load of people were like, this isn't on. You can't, it take a lifetime to be a knight.
There's something else I also wish to bring up. It's another type of revival movement, but not in the between war eras, but in 1988. The Sayudis movement. The group was a united front against the Soviets. Everybody sort of worked together for one common goal. And then you also had an event happening, the Baltic Way or the Baltic Chain, which is all the Baltic countries sort of uniting together, standing in a row, over 2 million people, to be sort of a demonstration against the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, but mostly the idea that they should be independent. It's a pro-independent movement. It was very effective. So you had the elite having a group together, and then the people showing their support by doing something that takes a lot of effort to do, which is standing in a long line, but that's still a lot of effort. Because to get normal people to revolt or to do any sort of demonstration is not easy to do. This national revival was massive in Lithuania, but immediately afterwards they split up. They created their different parties and they became inside quarrel again once they had the independence, as a normal nation does. But it was something that was being told to me, still don't really grasp it, but I want to bring it up. And it's the American Lithuanians. Lithuania, once independent, became like any other nation. But this romantic idea were more relevant elsewhere. And many American Lithuanians started creating art, poetry, songs, you name it, about this, but they don't understand what's happening in Lithuania. So there is this sort of disconnect between Lithuanians outside the country and Lithuanians inside the country. And it's a concern that Lithuania still has. Now you might wonder why is this a concern? I mean, it seems good. That is correct. It's not per se a bad thing. But it's the idea that Lithuanians leave Lithuania. And it's something that we saw a lot of when we were in Lithuania, because when we talk to a young person in their 20s, we ask them. It's like, hey, what have you done in your life? And they usually say, oh, no, I went to Manchester, I went to London, I went to Germany, I went anywhere else. So majority of young people spend their 20s outside the country. Why? Well, economically better for them. But many of them came back, and especially now, more and more coming back. So I did ask them, why did you come back? And there's a few different reasons. They said economically, obviously, it's great in other countries, but it's not home. Another reason, safety. Lithuania is a very safe country in comparison to many other locations in Western Europe. One guy told me, I would never leave the country because I love basketball. I mean, for some reason, basketball is a massive thing in Lithuania. That's it's kind of hilarious, but it came as a bit of a surprise. And other people were saying, even though it's worse, even though I don't get a lot of money here, I wish to grow this country. But in the same sense, this is a new concept, I would say now with COVID coming, that they're actually coming back because they want to grow. It's good, it's great. And when we spoke to some political-minded people, they even mentioned that there is a lot of political change happening in the country right now because of the Lithuanian coming back. They vote a very certain way, which gives certain people more power, which is quite interesting. So this disconnect between internal and external Lithuanians is always going to be there. But I wish for the Lithuanians the best. I wish them to go back to their country and grow it to be strong. It's a beautiful country. I liked it. I know I can't really be there or start anything there myself because I'm not a Lithuanian. But it is a gorgeous and safe and very relaxing country. We actually, a funny story, we actually lived in the ghetto when we were in Lithuania. And even in the ghetto, I felt very safe. There is though other issues, but I will not mention it here because it's a bit too much current event situation. But yes. So let's talk about the reason why we were in Lithuania in the first place. We were invited. Invited by whom, you might ask? Well, Romuva, the neo-pagans of Lithuania. The story of that is quite funny. I did a Gediminas video, and I thought, you know what? Why not get in contact with the organization that Gediminas started? Romuva. So I sent the high priestess an email, and I got a response back, not by the high priestess, but by Ignis, the first man coming along.
This place is enchanted.
Yes, very much so.
There's been chanting here for ages.
No, but
People used to be singing here, they used to be doing ceremonies, praying.
And he gave us a date, or the wrong dates, and I planned things around. I had to obviously plan quite a bit ahead. Planned it, and then a week before going there, we got the information that the dates were wrong. It was on the weekend, so we sadly missed the main event, which was supposed to be your special event for the pagans there, which is sad, but next year we can always see your again. We got invited again, so it's quite nice. But I learned a lot. Don't know how to say all of it, but there's a few things I want to mention. One, the connection with Gediminas and Romuva. When Gediminas and Jonas started Romuva as a national revival concept, it died out during the war, in particular with the Soviet annexation. It's all gone. So I thought modern day Romuva is a continuation of that idea, in name only. It's not the same organization. Some of the same people of sorts that were inspired by folklore did create it, but it's not per se the same. So the idea that says in the wiki, created by Gediminas, is not correct. The modern day one is created by Jonas Rinkunas. Jonas Rinkunas is, I never met him, he died 2014, but he seems to be a very talented man. he could organize these groups and keep them connected during both Soviet time and after Soviet time. But what is also important to kind of point out with Jonas and Kunas, why Romuva was started per se, yes, obviously he would have started something similar regardless, because it's about, folklore. Most of the group was created as an opposition for the Soviet Union, especially with Samistat and a few other things. It was a way of combating the Soviet influence in the country. And I know the argument's being said now, it's like, no, of course it's not. It's about the folk tradition and folklore. Yes, yes. But a lot of the members, and a lot of the reasons why it became so big, is because of the anti-Soviet rhetoric. It became an opposition. People could go there as an opposition to the Soviet Union. And after the Soviet Union collapsed, Romuva actually were massive. It was massive during a period of time. A lot of people came to the rituals because of the history of them, the history with them. Now they can have these ceremonies without the opposition, without the Soviet Union trying to cancel them or, worst case scenario, kill them. So it got very big, but there was a lot of other concerns, such as alcohol consumption. There was a period of one summer solstice where I think they said about 5,000 members came. Yeah, they didn't come there for the folklore thing or the traditions. They came there to and because of that, funny thing, when they had to move areas to follow, to continue the ritual in another area, the amount of alcoholic bottles that were all over the place were, yeah. And because of that event, because everybody came there to go look, they had to ban alcohol in their ceremonies because they didn't want people to go there just to drink, which is a very funny little story I had to talk to you about. But I had to talk a little bit more about the trip. We actually never met the high priestess. We never met Inya, which is quite sad. But we did meet Jonas Viskunas. And Jonas invited us to his home, and I could ask many of my questions that I wanted to ask, even though it's always a bit weird being in a man's house, having to ask questions when it felt very personal. But I learned a lot about Jonas, and I have a lot of respect for him. Many of the priests, they are very caring people. They have their flaws and they have their talents, I should say. That's for a much later conversation to have, 15 years down the line. But they actually do care quite a lot. And I want to thank Jonas for his hospitality and the food that he gave us. He didn't know we were coming at that point. He's like, oh, okay, well, these men are coming here. Okay, well, sit on my table, and he was like, here, have food. It was, I didn't know what to do half the time. It's like, do I eat this? Do I not eat this? But regardless, it was a very interesting conversation. And I learned a lot. And I also learned how Romuva, in a sense, is political. Jonas Kunas, the creator, was into it for a very long time, but when it actually became an actual hierarchical religion with set ideas, again, proper hierarchy, proper organization, but bit unsure. But it's a political entity through and through. So in 2014, when Jonas Kunas died, there were internal splits, because Jonas actually managed to uphold the faith in a way without making it splinter. But when he died, the left-wing area of Romuva left because they felt they were not included. Plus, they were also gatekeeping quite a lot previously. The sort of far right or conspiratorial people also left because there was also an internal conflict of who is to be the high priest or priestess. And there were a few cuckoo people, I should say, that tried to get that position and had their flock of people trying to push it. And they were sort of ousted, but they left by their own accord. So you have a very strict hierarchy They have the high priest and they have priests. But I would say there's even two levels of the priests. They're the ones closer to the organization itself and the ones a little bit further away. Because what the priest is supposed to do, or how it functions, is that you should have 15 members in a community to become a priest. So you have 50 members, you have gathered together. I says, I will become a priest of these 15 people. And that can give you the priesthood. Usually doesn't. You need a lot more, or something else needs to happen for you to get that priesthood. But usually that is the case. But those 15 people can be your selected people, if you get my point. And they can be political group of sorts. They can have their own political philosophy that they go for. And it all connected to that one priest. But usually that's not a concern, because you think, well, I mean, if they're just disconnected from the main group, or sort of halfly disconnected from the main group, that's fine. But here is where the two priestly, indirect hierarchies work. If you're far away with your own group, no one cares. You have no influence. But if you're closer influence to the group, your political ideas are going to be more centered. We met many of these higher priests, and we saw that their own political ideas were very influential in what type of people came, what philosophy the people around them have, and all of that. And they gatekeep, in a sense, keep some people away because they kind of get spooked by them. So here is my honest opinion. Stop that right away. The sad part is, and this is gonna rustle a lot of Jimmys. It's way too political. It's not spiritual enough. Read Gediminas. Read the old ideas. Be more spiritual. Try to avoid politics as much as possible. Because if this internal conflicts keeps happening, what future do you have? When Inya dies, the high priestess, will there be another conflict of interests? Who is allowed in? Who isn't allowed in? Inya is a very sweet person. We didn't meet her, but from what I understand, she's very sweet, she's very nice. But she is not her husband. She can't really keep all these different groups intact, in place. She seems distant in a way. She's not with the community as much. It does create an issue, because people will then do whatever they wish to do. With that said, even though I was very negative right now, she's still incredibly good. It could have been someone a lot worse. But let's move on, shall we? Let's try to summarize what we have talked about and understand the role of Romuva and the ethnogenesis from all of it. We talked about prehistory. We talked about who they are, the three migrational patterns, the hunter-gatherers, the non-existent farmer DNA, and the Yamnaya or coded ware influence in the culture. And here's an issue I have to talk to about Romuva a tiny bit. I feel there's a lot more Indo-European coded ware than it is hunter-gatherer. And I asked a question about this actually to them, about older traditions, older rituals. And I said, hey, some of the things that you guys do, the focus on fire. And I talked to you about the magnum opus of the hunter-gatherer, which is the ability to make fire. But a lot of these traditions seems very odd for being hunter-gatherer. And there's a lot more focus on the coded way, Indo-European and then Sanskrit and Indian influences than it is hunter-gatherer. Both Jonas Basanovichus and Gediminas' focus was on the Sanskrit and the connection with India. Gediminas in particular talked a lot about Hindu tradition and tried to bring that in. So that's why Romuva, in a sense, have a lot of Hindu influence, because they like to focus on that part of Lithuanian history where the Indo-European connection between Sanskrit and Lithuania, which is very good. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but there is a lot more to a Lithuanian than just his Sanskrit, because it's kind of like celebrating a mercenary band, because they invited them into their culture and communities to help them along. They weren't conquered by them. And then you focus a lot more on the people you hired in than the people who were there before, which is a bit of a concern, but it's not too much of a concern, because Gediminas and Jonas Basanovichus wanted to focus on that aspect. And The thing is as well, with Romuva, with Vidunas and Jonas, one thing that is very important about this entire national revival is about the woman in the beginning, Marija gumbutas. If not for Jonas and Vidunas and for Romuva, we wouldn't have the Kurgan theory. We wouldn't have a lot of these theories that we have now. They would come along later, obviously, but not right now. The study of prehistory, of migration patterns, is because of the focus on Lithuanian folk tradition. Marija gumbutas sat with Jonas and sat with Vidunas and listened to them talk when she was a young child and got inspired by them and wanted to continue to study it. If not for that, the world would look very different.
My work just now is becoming known. So this is just the beginning. And after some time, some archaeologists will use it. And I think that many will turn the direction toward the spirituality, toward the connection of archaeological evidence with mythological evidence and the continuity in historical times and up to present folklore. So that is, to me, very important. Without understanding European history, European culture in general, European mythologies, European folklore, you cannot really decipher certain things what you find in digging. You have to be widely interested, and not only in geology, mathematics, and statistics, and other things. So we have to know the spirituality of culture.